And I'm Kelcee Griffis with Bloomberg, and really pleased to be here with you, Congressman.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got here. You were legislative aide for Susana Kosmas for a couple of years, and more than a couple, it looks like. And then 15 years ago, you started your job. You started your job with her. Sorry, in actually my home state. I'm also from Florida. How have the priorities in Congress changed regarding technology policy now that you're back in the House?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I worked on the Hill about 15 years ago, and I think I was at a conference like this taking notes for my member. And I remember at the time, my boss was on the Science and Technology Committee, and now I'm going to be on the Science and Technology Committee. And the issues have changed a lot in 15 years, but it's still the same kind of overarching issue, which is what is our role as a government in promoting innovation and also putting the right guardrails in place. And so the mission hasn't changed. Certainly, I want to see also more investment in basic research generally. I want to see more initiative to help spur innovation in the private sector. But what has changed is what we're talking about, right? Blockchain is going to be a big issue this Congress. AI is going to be a big issue. Internet governance has always been a big issue. The things change, but the mission stays the same.
Definitely. Let's talk a little bit about your experience in the Obama White House. You led the White House Technology Policy Task Force, and you released a paper during your time there called TQ and Public Policy. How would you explain TQ to this audience, and how is it relevant to today's landscape?
Yeah, so I was brought on to run a task force on technology policy in the second term of the Obama administration. And so the idea was there was a lot happening in the tech world, and we had people at the State Department and the NSC and other places that were doing really important work where technology was involved, but they didn't really know technology very well. We had other people who, especially post healthcare.gov crisis, came in to fix that and knew technology really well. And they had a lot of important, interesting things to say on technology policy as well, and at least be able to educate their colleagues on how things work from a technical standpoint. And so it's nice to have a technologist in the room. So one of the missions was, if you're going to do policy on AI, wouldn't you like to have someone in the room who knows what AI is and how it works and the difference between generative and non-generative AI, right? That'd be nice to have, right? And then the second part of it was also, we have a lot of big technology things happening. And yes, technology is in everything and everywhere, but we should have a list of priorities and just try to figure out how we can address them. So we had a president and President Obama who cared deeply about technology and innovation and made it a priority. And so he empowered a lot of the technologists in that administration to have a voice when it came to policy. So that's what TQ and policy means. And I think that applies even today in Congress and in the administration as well. I hope that work was bipartisan. I hope that they'll continue to look to technologists to help shape technology policy.
So I want to stay on your experience there a little bit. One of your specialties there was modernizing the government agencies and boosting government efficiency. It seems like that's a topic that's very relevant in today's climate. What can you share about what you learned then that you think still applies now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we worked with the U.S. Digital Service a lot at the time. I was in the office of the CTO. It's now called the U.S. Doge Service, apparently, and there was a rebrand. It is Doge now. That office is Doge now. But at the time, we stood it up post healthcare.gov as a way of basically getting technologists into government and helping agencies try to modernize their processes. And what we found was, it's not the federal civil service servants that are the problem when it comes to how slow government is sometimes. It's Congress that's the problem. It's the regulations that they have to follow. And so, take example, I'm going to, embellish a little bit, but let's say you want to buy like a new pack of paper clips, right? You can go to Office Depot or wherever on Amazon, buy some right now, right? But if you do that in government, you go through a procurement process, and it might take you 6 months to find a new vendor if you want to buy a new set of paper clips. Like, how is that the fault of the federal civil servant? They're just following the laws, and maybe the laws are in place. They are in place as anti-corruption measures. They are in place as ways to make the process fair and to get more American businesses engaged. But that doesn't mean we should fire all the federal civil servants to solve that problem. I think the way to solve that problem is to look at the regs. And another thing to put on your radar is the Paperwork Reduction Act. It doesn't actually reduce paperwork. And that was a big problem for us when we're working with agencies like GSA, and we stood up a thing called 18F there at the time. I don't think it's there anymore, but we wanted to at least try to see what we could do to make government better, faster, more efficient. Because if people have a bad experience with government, then they don't trust government. They want to burn it to the ground. And so I think what you're seeing is the burning of it to the ground right now because of many years of frustration. But I don't think they're going about it the right way. In fact, they're going about it the opposite way that I would, which is let's work with the civil servants, identify the regs that actually need to be modernized, and then Congress should pass some laws to fix that. If we want to actually be productive about this and not hurt the American people's safety and health and security long term, that's the way we should go about it.
There you go. A little bit of advice for Doge, it sounds like. So,
I'm sure they'll take it, right?
So after you left the Obama administration, you worked with several tech startups in the private sector. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like and what you learned there that you're taking to Congress now?
Yeah, it's fun to be a part of building something new, and it's always a roller coaster. And I was probably part of about up to 10 startups, and probably 8 of them failed. And so you learn how to fail very quickly and just move on to the next thing and know when to quit. But I think it was really helpful for me to be a part of small businesses or startups and see the challenges that they face. I think a lot of Americans are small business owners themselves. A lot of people in the tech scene are, at one point or are a startup. And so I think startups are a great engine for innovation as well. I don't want to see Congress. One of the things I don't like sometimes is Congress will put regulations and laws in place that will make it hard for new entrants to join a market and try to do something different. It stifles innovation sometimes, and so we have to be careful. We have to find the right balance between certainly doing the right things for an industry, but not shutting out competition, new competition especially. So that's a couple of things that I learned from that experience.
Well, that sounds like an important message to bring to your district now. You're serving in Virginia's 10th district, which is unique in that it's home to many tech companies, and it has the highest concentration of data centers in the U.S. What are some of the challenges you face representing this district with these dynamics?
I think while we need data centers right now, for us, it's creating an energy problem. And so, and that's happening across the country. And so it's also creating a problem with our water supply and just generally building infrastructure to be able to meet the power demands, especially when you consider that we had clean energy goals in Virginia. Now we're building power lines to coal country in West Virginia. And so that kind of undermines that long-term goal. And so I think there's a lot of players in the space that want to be part of the solution, which is good. But the reality is we need to build a lot of data centers long term, or figure out how else we're going to have that sort of storage to be able to power AI and blockchain and all the other things that are coming up. So if my district were a country, it would have the most data centers of any country. It has 70% of the internet running through it. This is Loudoun County, about 30 or 40 minutes away. The other thing I worry about is security. If I were foreign agent, I wanted to attack someone, I would attack us, not the White House, because people care far more about their kids' pictures than they do about what's going on here. And so that's another thing that I've put on people's radar is we also need to make sure that these facilities are secure. Absolutely.
Now, you're currently serving on the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. What are some of the issues that you're watching there, and what do you hope to accomplish during your work with the committee?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you heard we had a federal freeze a couple weeks ago. We have some agency cuts going on right now. But, we had our first hearing on the competitiveness of the U.S. in technology and innovation and science. And I think if we want to stay competitive as a country, that requires us to invest in basic research. I think we should be increasing the budget of NIH, NSF, and just technology investment generally. I think we should be part of trying to make sure we have the technology infrastructure needed. We need to figure out how to solve getting more data centers deployed while also balancing the environmental needs and all the other needs. And so there's a lot we need to do as a country right now, and this is the worst thing to freeze, I think, because it makes us less competitive on the international stage. And it also, frankly, a lot of our innovations help a lot of other countries too, and spur a lot of innovation around the world. And I think technology and innovation is also in science is a great diplomatic tool as well. It strengthens our relationships with other countries if we can use that as like a lead. That's what I did in the White House. I started an initiative on broadband access where we would help countries without spending any money as a country. We'd help countries get loans from MDBs and other institutions to provide broadband access to their people. And we part of it was also we wanted to make sure that they provided a free and democratic institution and free internet as well. But by doing that, we strengthened our diplomatic ties with several countries, and I hope that we can continue that kind of work and use technology as a tool for better relations across the world.
There you go. I think a lot of people in this room would agree that the internet is a uniting force. And I am so glad that you brought up broadband funding because I wanted to ask you about that. Can you tell us a little more about how you think about broadband access and affordability and what you would like to see Congress doing to address these important issues?
Yeah, part of it is money, like making sure we fund it, but then you look at especially the last mile in rural areas, for instance, it can be expensive for how many people you're serving, right? So we have to get creative. It's nice, again, I'm going to be a broken record, but it's nice to have more people who know the technology at the table to be able to help make decisions on how we can deploy broadband access. That's some of the things we tried to do. USDA had a rural broadband initiative, and when I was at the White House, we worked with them closely on how they could deploy it in the most cost-efficient way, and we had a lot of success with that. And so, I know that we as a country have made some really good strategic investments in broadband access, but there's more to do. I'd like to see 100% access in our country and as many parts of the world as possible.
Now, where do you think the different technology or delivery methods fit into this? Do you see satellite playing an increasing role, for example, in serving some of these areas that are expensive to serve?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, satellite. I mean, we should be technology agnostic, I think. Just whatever it's going to take. I want to make sure that it's quality access, internet access as well. But if whether it's satellite or cable, we were big on dig once in Virginia, and I have been throughout my career. And so whatever it takes, there's a lot of different ways to tackle this problem, and it's all of the above. Solution. I
think I heard some applause for dig once. Okay. There we go. So as we've already discussed, you previously served in the Obama administration, and now you're in an oversight committee role. So I'm curious, given that assignment plus your tech experience, where do you think is the most important place to apply scrutiny to the Trump administration, particularly in the tech sector?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, the Science Committee, for those of you who don't know, it's a very bipartisan committee, and I think that's a place where we can try to push to get more funding for science, technology, and innovation. And I hope we'll have some success there. The Oversight Committee is the most partisan committee by far. It's almost theatrical how partisan it is. I'm trying to at least be a voice on there to just see if we can have an angle where we do real oversight at some point, right? Because I think any administration needs oversight. It doesn't seem like this oversight committee wants to do real oversight, but certainly I'd want to know my task right now, I have so many federal workers in my district and federal contractors, and they have a lot of questions about what's going on right now. And so it's hard for us to get answers when, we had a hearing on right-sizing government, and none of the people from DOGE were there. It was the governor of Iowa came instead, who had no idea what was going on with DOGE. And so we'd like to at least have some sort of communication with those folks as to what's going on and what the plan is. And frankly, a lot of what's happening, they're stepping on the authority of Congress, and it's unconstitutional. It's not legal. So that would be my goal, is to make sure that Congress keeps its power and doesn't cede all its power to one person or two people in government, and sometimes outside of government.
Great. Well, that's the extent of the questions I had for you. I would love to open this up to the floor. If anyone would like to ask some questions, we've got microphones on either side. Please feel free to give it a shot.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Austin Bonner. I was one of the deputy CTOs in the Biden administration. And my experience in OSTP, and I hope it was yours too, is that one of the best things was getting to know the engineers and technologists who are all over our government. They're having a hard time this week, and I wonder what you think Congress can do to make sure those are still good jobs that people want to have when they want to serve our country.
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for your service. And it's a hard question to answer. I can't say with a straight face to a federal civil servant right now that what's going to happen to your job or how safe or secure your job is right now. I hope in the next months and the months ahead we can give a better answer. But this is what I'm trying to warn people about on both sides of the aisle, is if you attack federal workers, if you attack people who serve the federal government, who left, in many cases, especially in the case of engineers, higher paying, better jobs to serve in government because they cared about this country and wanted to fix something or serve in some way, how are you going to attract great talent back? I talked to a nuclear scientist who said that they retired because they didn't want to have to deal with this anymore. And how are you going to replace that person with 20 years of experience in a very niche part of an agency? And so this is a brain drain in our government. That's what's going to happen. And the people who are going to exit first are going to be the people who are the most in demand in the private sector and who are the ones we don't want leaving, right? So I think that there's a lot of unintended consequences to what's happening, and that question really points to that. And what I've told people in the federal workforce is to not take the buyout offer, to keep at it, to please stay because our country needs you, and that I'll do everything in Congress to try to fight for you because we need you. And in a lot of cases, that is very true. So it's a great question. I hope we can get the answer in a couple of months.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Hi. Hi, Congressman. My name is Chris Lewis. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, but I grew up in Herndon, Virginia, not far from, or it's in your district, I think.
Close, yeah.
In your answer on broadband, I know broadband's a big topic, and you mostly covered access, but you didn't cover affordability, and you advocated for an all-of-the-above approach, including satellite. Satellite's been studied to be far more expensive for consumers, including the devices to get access to satellite. It just costs so much more for consumers than other types of broadband. So given that the Congress ended subsidies for low-income broadband last Congress, what's your solutions for supporting folks getting that sort of expensive broadband in rural areas?
Yeah, that's tough. It's a really good question. I mean, at the state level, I passed legislation, and it was bipartisan to have subsidies for rural areas as well as urban poor areas, and it was very successful. In fact, we saw, wherever it was deployed, there'd be better outcomes in the schools actually, because kids could finally do their homework outside of school, and so we want to continue that. I sold it at the state level as a great investment in our our families and our kids, helps people join companies that offer telework. It's in many orders of magnitude great for every part of our society and our economy. And so, certainly if the federal government is not going to be doing those investments, we're going to have to find another place. The states, there's one place, but not everyone has the resources Virginia does. So again, on science and tech, I'm going to be pushing to make sure we keep those investments because it's critically important.
Great. I think we've got another question on this side.
Hi, Congressman. Thanks so much for joining us. I was wondering, certainly there's plenty that probably keeps you up at night, but what about, science, technology, and so forth are you excited about? What kind of, are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I've just seen our country just do so many innovative things in so many different spaces. And a lot of it came from investments that the federal government made, at one point or another. And so that's why I'm a big evangelist of making sure we fund basic research in science and technology, that it used to be you could get an NSF grant pretty easily, and that's changed over many decades, and now it's hard to get one, and now people who have them are really worried that what's going on, that they're not going to be able to get their funding. And so I've talked to a lot of labs, for instance, that are just really scared right now. They're not sure if they're going to keep going, and they have research that they've been working on for years that's almost there, right? And so, that's, again, I'm talking about the unintended consequences of what's going on. I think we have to protect those investments in science and tech because we can do so much. We have so much talent as a country. We can do so much with just a little bit of investment, and that's what makes me excited, but also concerned right now.
Great. Let's take one from this side, and then we'll go over there.
Yes, hey, Suhan. My name's Steve Williams, President, National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, on the Internet Society Board of Directors. I'm a Sterling, Virginia resident.
Great.
I moved to Loudoun County in Leesburg in 2000 from Los Angeles, California. I was on the Pac-Bell DSL team. I'm a technologist. I came there and I realized I couldn't get internet connectivity, even though I could hit the central office with a rock from where I was living at in Leesburg. So I developed a network called Skynet Access. You probably know that network. I'm the founder. And we ran everybody out of town with our wireless connection, being able to push two T1 lines, 3 megs at a time. Response back was from Comcast. They brought in Roadrunner there first. We saw other people come in. Cox, of course, with the Roadrunner service, Verizon brought in their high-speed service and responded in the internet capital of the world real quickly. Fast forward, pandemic. I do the same thing in West Las Vegas, Soul City Wi-Fi. I bring in the same high-speed connectivity there. No response from any of the carriers. As a matter of fact, they asked me to stop in the neighborhood. The private industry runs on an ROI model, period, the end. And when they look at neighborhoods that are traditionally underserved, it is the ROI model that prevents them from investing in real technology. You go to Baltimore, you're 3 miles from a pop, but yet the previous commissioner of the FCC said it was covered. I got 8 churches that are getting ready to fly balloons and raise some question about it. The dispersal and the access to internet connectivity has to be better than that USDA broadband plan, because they came and spoke to my people several times, right? And they worked in Kansas City with the Utopia Project and Google, and you saw how that turned out. So we need to have a complete reevaluation from the grassroots level at deploying and conquering the last mile and the middle mile problem in America. And it's not going to be something that I don't think that the private sector is going to do. So how do you feel about raising internet connectivity to the level of a public service utility and making sure that the government is behind that is equally deployed? If they deploy fiber in Leesburg, they deploy fiber in Mississippi. If they're going to run one connection place, they make sure it's equal every place else. That's my first connection. Everything else don't make a difference if you're not connected.
I couldn't help notice the sponsors of this event. So without trying to start a civil war, I'll say that we should talk, especially if you're a constituent. We'll talk afterwards. But we did have a bill in the Virginia General Assembly to do that. It did not pass the House. But I know that there's efforts on the way to try to do what you're just talking about. Good question. Okay.
Great. We got a question on this side.
Yeah, I'm curious whether there are areas where you feel aligned with the new administration and what they want to do. And are there things that they want to do that you think are exciting and maybe more possible to do now together?
Yeah, I was saying before, I love the idea of government modernization, of making things better, more efficient, being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. But it's how they're doing it that I have a problem with, right? Like, we had a committee hearing where I made the analogy, like, if the kitchen cabinets in your house are broken, you don't burn down the house, right? You just fix the cabinets, right? And so we don't, I understand the goals and I understand the message, but I don't understand, I don't agree with the way that they're going about it. It's certainly not, I don't think it's legal or constitutional, but that's one place where I've always wanted to work across the aisle to try to make that better, make government more efficient and give it better services. And I think that's work that's been ongoing for a while now and been bipartisan.
Great. I think we've got time for one more question.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm the director of the Congressional App Challenge, and I had a really quick question because your predecessor had been a previous co-chair of the program, and I know, given your background and some of the things that you talked about, we work with thousands of high school students across the country who are interested in technology and interested in getting involved in civic engagement with technology. Given the landscape, what sort of advice would you give to those students, not just for the short term, but as they look into their futures?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love the challenge, and we want to make sure we continue that. I'll be certainly continue to champion that the way my predecessor did. And I've always told people, not just in tech, but in all fields, I've been wanting to get people engaged in public service in some form because everyone's got a talent, right, that they can contribute. And we had the Presidential Innovation Fellows program where it'd be like tours of duties for technologists to come into government and come out. And so again, I don't want what's happening right now to get in the way of a lot of work that's happened over the past decade and getting technologists and enthusiasts involved in public service. You don't even have to work directly for government. There's so many different organizations that are doing great work, many of whom are here. And so I would just tell those students, go get your degree, work at a company that you really like, or start something, build something, but then try to use your talents as well to give back in some way. You'll find that even if you're not at all involved in campaigns, that your talent is much needed in our government, in our society, and that you should feel free and feel empowered to use it for good.
Wonderful. Well, I think we're at time. Again, that was Representative Suhas Subramanyam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.